Hello, and welcome back to the Phoenix's Tale, the weekly Harry Potter themed podcast where I am sharing my life story, excuse me, through a chapter by chapter analysis of the entire Harry Potter book series. I am your host, Gabe, and this week we are talking chapter 16 from the Sorcerer's Stone, Through the Trapdoor. So, let me get to the recap first. Sorry about that. Okay, let's do this. So, in this chapter, things are getting serious. So, the exams are over for the end of the year for our golden trio. And while relaxing by the lake, Harry begins to question everything about Norbert and how Hagrid got the dragon egg in the first place. He also mentions when they go to talk to Hagrid about it, Hagrid lets slip out that he mentions how to put Fluffy to sleep. And our golden trio are set to go after the stone before Voldemort can, or before Snape can, because they're still in that mindset that last week Harry found out from Ferenzi that weird whatever that sinister thing was drinking the unicorn blood was Lord Voldemort. They are convinced that Snape was after the stone to bring Voldemort back to power. So they go and they get past Fluffy and go through the trapdoor, landing on Devil's Snare, escaping that, finding the correct key in the next room to unlock the door into the chess room, where we see Ron play an incredible game of chess. He got knocked out, though, unfortunately, which meant Harry and Hermione had to continue on without him. They go right past the knocked out troll in the next room, and Hermione ends up solving the puzzle riddle, thereby allowing Hermione to drink the right potion to go back and get help to save Ron, etc., and allowing Harry to go forward into the next room where we know the final showdown's about to happen. So, the chapter closes with it mentioning that somebody was there, but it wasn't Voldemort, and it wasn't even Professor Snape. For those of you who don't know the story, I'm going to leave it there because we find out next week. Anyway, these last few chapters have been really rich with concepts that I can tie directly to my own life. And this chapter was no different. And a couple of these really jumped off the page for me when I was researching this. So the first has to do with problem solving under pressure. And this is something that I have come to prize about myself as a gift over the years, because it seems that the more chaotic a situation, the easier it is for me to calm, assess the situation, and focus on finding a way out or a way through whatever the situation is. Given that my childhood was quite chaotic because of my father's verbal abuse mixed with my autism, this is actually quite common for anybody who's neurodivergent, mixing in some sort of childhood trauma, whether it's, abuse, abandonment, what have you. And I wanted to dig into the psychology of this because I know that this will apply not just to autistics who experience childhood abuse of some kind, but pretty much any neurodivergent type. So if this applies to you, great. If it doesn't, I am absolutely not discounting your experience with whatever neurodivergence trait you have, whether you're OCD, ADHD, etc. Again, I can only speak to my own experience, but I know that childhood trauma mixing with a neurodivergent archetype, this is common for us to be able, in chaos, to be calm and calmly find a way through. So, here are some of the reasons how and why that happens. Number one, heightened awareness and sensitivity to context. Growing up with verbal abuse or any form of trauma often means being constantly aware of subtle shifts in mood, tone, or environment to anticipate harm or conflict. Over years, this hypervigilance, originally a protective mechanism, can become a powerful ability to rapidly assess situations and read the room. In chaos or stressful scenarios, your brain's alert system activates, making you more attuned to key details and possible consequences. Number two, rapid adaptation. When the environment is unpredictable, you learn to adapt quickly in order to stay safe. I can attest to that one. This flexibility can become ingrained, so when a crisis hits, instead of freezing, you instinctively start scanning for solutions and options, which I do. You may even feel more comfortable in chaos because ordered situations can feel unfamiliar or less engaging. Number three, enhanced pattern recognition. Survivors of verbal abuse can often get good at seeing patterns, what leads to conflict, what calms a situation, what strategies have worked in the past. This pattern recognition supports fast, effective decision making under pressure. Number four, this was an interesting one when I read through it. Emotional detachment during crisis. For some trauma survivors, intense situations trigger a problem-solving mode, where emotions are subsequently set aside so you can focus on action. This dissociative adaptation, although initially protective, can mean you're able to function optimally when in chaos while others are overwhelmed by emotions. You ever see anybody, if you resonate with this real quick, I want to ask you this question. Have you in your life experienced somebody, something happens, some big chaotic thing happens, and the people around you just like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. And they start panicking. And, yeah. Drives me up the fucking wall. It's like, really? Here's the solution right there. I'm like 10 steps ahead. Anyway, number five, sense of agency and control. There's sometimes a drive to fix situations as a way of regaining the control that was taken from you in childhood. This motivation can result in a highly action-oriented mindset. As soon as something goes wrong, you jump into solution-finding mode. Number six, mastery through repetition. The more you are exposed to unstable or challenging situations, especially from a young age, the more experience you gain with problem solving under pressure. Over time, this constant practice becomes a genuine skill set, one you can rely on and even appreciate as a core strength. And I was really curious, and so I went into, my AI tool Perplexity. The link is in the show notes, I believe. I was curious as to why this happened. That's something that I tend to be very good at, is why? Why does this happen? This is why psychology appeals to me so much, because for as long as I can remember, I was fascinated by people and why they do different things and why they believe certain things. And, I was just always fascinated with it. So psychology for me is a really good fit. It's not just about finding my own solutions to my own problems. It's about figuring out the people around me and why they think differently, why they behave differently than I do. So let's dive into the why it happens. So, post-traumatic growth theory. Researchers such as Tedeschi and Calhoun have found that some people develop new strengths, skills, and a greater sense of competence as a direct result of overcoming adversity. Being highly skilled at managing chaos can be a form of post-traumatic growth. The next one is adaptive coping strategies. Studies show that trauma survivors often develop strong coping habits that are very effective in high pressure scenarios, even though these skills may have originally formed out of necessity. And then the final one is survival mechanisms. According to trauma experts like Bessel van der Kolk, adaptations that were once meant for survival, such as hypervigilance, quick situational scanning, prioritizing action, can become valuable life skills outside of the traumatic context. So, if you thrive under pressure, it is likely because your brain and behavior learned over many years how to cut through the chaos and find solutions. In part as a way to regain safety and control for yourself over your life and your immediate surroundings. This skill is real, it is valid, and it is supported by trauma psychology research as one of the many ways some survivors turn adversity into unique strengths. And we see this quite clearly in this chapter with Harry throughout the entire journey, from the third floor corridor to the room where the Mirror of Erised is. He calmly went through the trapdoor first, figured out about the keys and that he needed to get the correct one. And by allowing, Ron with his strength and playing that chess game, or Hermione figuring out the potion riddle, he was, by the writing, we could tell that Harry was scared. But at the same time, he was so focused on getting to the solution, if you will, to getting to the heart of the problems, getting the stone and stopping who he thought at the time was Snape, bringing Voldemort back to power. That's the vibe that I felt from Harry reading this chapter. Is he was very cool, calm, and collected. He knew he needed music, and Hagrid had gave him that sweet little whistle that kind of sounded like an owl to play the music to put Fluffy to sleep. He goes through the trapdoor first. Okay, come on down, everybody. He figures out the keys, etc. So for me, I may have told this story before, and at this point, I'm probably sure I am. We are 16 chapters into many, many, many chapters here, but it bears repeating. I was in my early 20s at the time, and I had my mom's car for some reason, and I believe I was coming home from work that particular night. Anyway, it was a bit foggy that night when suddenly a deer had jumped out into the road from my left, right in front of me. And in a split second, literally a split second, I ascertained that there were no cars coming toward me and that there was nobody behind me. And because of the fog, I noticed that the deer wasn't the typical caught in the headlights. He was going to keep moving toward my right off the road. And for anybody out there who knows anything about hunting, it was a buck, or in Harry Potter world, it was a stag. And it was legal. It had its antlers it was legal. And all I knew is I did not want that head coming in through the windshield at me, so that I intentionally swerved into the oncoming lane. As I just said, there were no cars in front of me, no cars behind me. Because if I was going to hit this thing, and I knew I was going to hit this thing, I'd rather hit it in the rump than toward the front where those antlers could come through the windshield at me. And as a result, there was just probably about this big, right down near the catch, but not so far that it ruined the catch, so the lid or the hood of the car could stay locked. That's all the damage that was done to the car, because that's how my brain works. That's how I function in chaos. It was just, okay, no traffic, I'm safe to hit this thing. And because it was a little tiny Chevy Metro at the time, It was surprising that that's all that there was damage, was that indent from where, the deer's rump hit the car before it bounded off. But the deer bounded off and it was gone. So that's what I'm talking about. It's things like that. When something happens and, there's a bit of a crisis somewhere, I immediately shut down emotionally and boop, boop, boop. Okay, this is the safest way through this. And that's exactly the result. So, on another topic that kind of jumped out at me when I was doing the research on this is rebellion against authority. Now, I will admit that this is something I've struggled with my entire life, because as much as I wanted to openly rebel, my childhood trauma led to some serious people-pleasing tendencies. We talked a little bit about that last week. So I haven't actually done much in the name of rebelling against authority, but I always have my own way. Passive aggressive, I believe, would be the proper term here, of rebelling in my own way. I may not openly rebel and say, hey, but I always find a way to rebel anyway. But I wanted to take a look at that as well. So we're going to dive into that with the psychology. And as always, all of my references for any of the actual psychological stuff that I talk about are in my show notes. So, rebellion against authority is a complex psychological phenomenon. And your experience, I put in my own life into perplexity to get these answers. Your experience of feeling rebellious but rarely acting on those impulses due to strong people-pleasing tendencies is actually a well-documented dynamic. So I'm not alone in being a silent rebel, if you will. Psychological roots. Rebellion versus people-pleasing. Rebellion, or psychological reactance, is what they gave me. On a fundamental level, most people possess an inner rebel, a psychological drive to resist being controlled, restricted, or told what to do. I hate that. This instinct, called psychological reactance, emerges when we feel our freedom or autonomy is threatened. It is our brain's way of protecting your sense of self from external constraints or arbitrary authority. People may feel anger, annoyance, or defiance inside, even if they don't outwardly express it. People-pleasing. Conversely, people-pleasing is often a deeply learned survival strategy, particularly for those who grew up in environments where belonging, emotional safety, or approval were conditional. Instead of expressing rebellion, people-pleasers instinctively avoid conflict and suppress their own desires in order to maintain harmony, reduce anxiety about rejection or criticism, and secure acceptance from others. For many, this coping style develops from trauma or constant criticism in childhood. Me. It simply felt too risky to challenge authority or reveal authentic emotions. It absolutely did. I mean, I don't have a lot of memories from my childhood anyway, because of all the trauma I've been carrying my entire life. First from that, and now from the last 12 years with my initial trauma event with the PTSD. What few hazy memories I do have, literally just one or two where it felt okay, I guess, being around my father. The rest of the time, I just remember a lot of yelling and a lot of feeling that knot in my stomach and feeling that constant state of always being at yellow alert, going back to Star Trek. That fucking wears on you. I'm not gonna lie. It fucking wears on you. But, yeah, that last bit, challenging authority or revealing authentic emotions, that is not something that I safely felt like I could do at all in my childhood. So, internal conflict. The tension you describe, feeling rebellious but not acting on it, is the direct result of these conflicting drives. People pleasers often experience an invisible rebellion, where resentment and frustration build up because they consistently put their needs aside and do not challenge authority or unfairness. While the urge to rebel is there, the learned need to avoid disapproval or conflict is stronger, so rebellion remains internalized. Many people pleasers report that when the pressure becomes too much, it can eventually lead to emotional burnout or sudden mini rebellions, outbursts, or defiant acts that seem out of character. These are often the result of accumulated frustration from constantly suppressing one's true feelings. This dynamic is especially prevalent among those who identify as highly sensitive, me, empathetic, me, and who have survived trauma, me, because the consequences of displeasing authority figures in their past may have been significant. The desire for safety and belonging ultimately overrides the overrides the urge for autonomy and self-expression, so one's rebellion is felt rather than enacted. The psychological perspective. Psychologists note that people-pleasing behaviors can erode boundaries and lead to an identity crisis, since you are always trying to be what others want you to be rather than expressing your authentic self. Last week I talked about social isolation, specifically choosing social isolation. I talked a bit about I'm choosing my self ring that I always wear. That was symbolic of this new mindset shift when I briefly reunited with two friends from high school, and then that blew up, and they were numbers 11 and 12 on a list of people who, in a very short period of time, basically showed their true colors, showed that they were not the people I thought they weren't the friends that I needed, what have you. That social isolation has also helped me with this, as far as figuring out what exactly do I want to be. I want to break down those barriers, because I want to fully express that, no, I don't want to do this thing because it doesn't interest me. Or I'm choosing to do this instead, and if you don't like it, that's on you. I don't care. It doesn't affect my day-to-day living to continue to do that, nor does it harm you for me to choose to do that, whether it's buying a certain car, whether it's having something specific for lunch, or whatever it is. So again, we'll see how well this works out for me as things continue on, and hopefully I can start breaking out of this social isolation a little bit and start actually meeting the right people for me, whether platonically or romantically, it doesn't matter. So anyway, understanding this pattern can empower you to navigate it more consciously, perhaps by finding safe ways to assert yourself or recognize situations where your rebellion can be constructive, not destructive or overwhelming. Over the last couple of years, I have found that I don't necessarily enjoy being much of a people pleaser, because it meant a lot of unnecessary resentment and frustration with myself, as well as towards those to whom I've not asserted myself. So I've been collecting some exercises, as it were, to help me, and I want to share some of those with you, because they have been working. So when I say I've been going through and figuring out what it is that I want and taking full advantage of this social isolation, I've actually been doing the work. So, building the skill of standing up for yourself, especially for trauma survivors or chronic people pleasers, is a practice that can be actively developed through targeted exercises. And here are some of the ones that, at least for now, to the best of my ability that I can exercise them in real life, have been working for me. So, number one, you need to clarify your values. So you do that by listing your top 5 personal values. You can Google, you can use ChatGPT or any other AI tool to help you with this, but list your top 5 personal values. Then number 2, you're going to reflect on how honoring these values can guide you when you need to assert yourself. And number 3, practice expressing your needs or opinions by framing them around these values. For example, I value honesty, so I need to share how I really feel about this, as an actual sentence you would say to somebody. Number 2, boundary setting scripts. I find for me, having a number of these scripts in mind really help me. So write down phrases that you can use to set boundaries, such as, I'm not comfortable with that, I need some time to think about it, or quite simply, no thank you. Practice saying them out loud in front of a mirror, with a trusted friend, family member, whomever you trust, or even alone, until they feel more natural. One thing that I want to mention, as I'm recording a podcast episode, I have found that the moments when I am more comfortable and relaxed about speaking on camera on social media, on an app like TikTok especially, I find that a really good way to practice. Because when I first started TikTok, March of 2024, so about a year and a half ago, I was reacting the same way that I always react whenever I would get criticism, whenever somebody would push back, whenever somebody would, put me in that kind of frame of mind. I'm freezing, I don't know what to say, and now I want to fawn. I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry. I have found especially useful, doing stitches or using the video response feature to actual comments and saying what I really want to say. I have been finding that extremely helpful in getting that practice in a safe space, because the reality is these people don't know me, so it doesn't matter to them or to me if I step up and say, you know what, you completely misunderstood the assignment, or you know what, don't generalize just because I'm this or that. I push back and I face the camera, and I find that I have gotten more comfortable in that environment. The idea being that with everything that we are doing that is new, whether you're learning to speak another language, whether you're learning to play a musical instrument for the first time, for me, speaking up and standing up for myself and saying what needs to be said, it all takes practice. You've got to practice those things. So, social media apps, especially, like I said, like apps like TikTok, where it's that short form video, or even, doing podcast episodes, I have found it very effective. So if you are stuck in that in your life right now, you are as socially isolated as I am, you really don't have people around you to practice or rehearse some of these things, I find it extremely helpful. So there's a little tip for you, and hopefully that'll help you. Role play. I haven't been able to do this one so far because it requires somebody that I actually trust, and I love my mother, but holy shit, I don't know what goes on in her brain sometimes. But with a safe friend, therapist, or even yourself, imagine scenarios where you typically struggle to stand up for yourself, and then act out the scenario, assert your needs, and experiment with different ways to communicate your stance. Again, social media, it has been very effective for me. Journaling, this is another one that I have been using. I've got, because I love to write and I love journals, I found this awesome 3-pack of journals at Costco earlier this year, and I've got them all color coded, obviously. So one is for one is for, I can't think of the word, but, like my tarot type stuff. Because I'm interested in stuff like that. So I'm writing down, my astrology. This one is kind of just a mashup of a fantasy journal as far as what are the things that I want to do when I do get back on my feet and I start creating that income for myself, like get a new car, get a new sofa or love seat for my end of the house, because all I have is a recliner. It works for me because it's just me over here. I need a new pair of running shoes. I don't dare try to get back into running with the shoes I have because they've broken down, and I'm in my 50s. So maybe some new bedding, kind of refresh my bedroom look, things like that. But journal. I also, you'll see like at Walmart, Target, locally here, Meyer, the little single spiral bound notebooks that go on sale for like 35 cents a piece. I grab like 5 or 6 of those every school year because I end up using them for various different things. I love journals. I got all sorts of notebooks and journals. Anyway, little insight into the geekiness of Gabe here. Journaling your discomfort is where we're going with this. After any situation where you felt you have given in, journal about what you wish you had said or done. It actually helps. I still ruminate about it a lot. Oh, damn, I should have said this to so-and-so the other day. But journaling it and putting it in a way where I'm encouraging myself as though I'm talking to a child, it's okay. It takes practice, and that's how I journal those things out. And then start reviewing those entries, and you'll start to see a pattern emerge. And looking at specifically what made that situation difficult and what do you think would make it easier for you in the future. Because, you're going to have an argument with somebody else about something you just argued with your spouse with, or your adult child with, or a sibling or whatever. Journaling helps, at least for me. Assertive statement practice. Each day, practice making one small assertive statement. This could be as simple as choosing where to eat or disagreeing respectfully with a friend. Gradually increase the challenge as your comfort grows. So going back to those scripts that we talk about, no thank you. Practice that one. That's a good one. Or, I need some time to think about this, and I'll get back to you. Anyway, visualization. That all comes into play with this. Visualize yourself responding assertively, but not aggressively, in situations where you usually stay silent. Picture staying calm, grounded, and confident. If possible, pair visualization with deep breathing. I want to talk about something here, because I just thought of something with the no thank you. Is as somebody, and I practiced this a lot after I had my gastric bypass and I was losing the weight because, thanks to my father, I tied so much of my worth and all of that stuff into how I looked physically. And yeah, I need a gastric bypass to help me lose weight 22 years ago. So you can imagine how big I got. So getting compliments from people, that was a difficult one, because I always felt things like that were lies. They weren't being truthful. They were just being polite. They don't really mean it. And when I started getting compliments from people, I started with people that I knew and I trusted. And I had a decent social circle around me at that time. So this really helped, because these were people that I did trust. These are people that I would say that they are honest people. They are genuine people. So if they're being honest and genuine and truthful, Why would they lie to me about, oh, that's such a cute outfit? Or, wow, you're looking really good. Or, I love your new hairdo. Or, anything like that. Anything associated with how I felt about myself post gastric bypass as I'm losing the weight. I practice saying, oh, thank you. That's very nice of you. Instead of brushing it away, because these are people who, I trusted, and they're honest people. Why am I brushing away a compliment that they're giving me when clearly they mean it? Hypervigilance is, okay, so-and-so isn't being rude about it. She or he must genuinely think, they like this particular outfit on me. They think it looks nice. It's flattering to my emerging thinner figure, whatever it is. That was a difficult one for me to practice, but I did it. I just, I feigned the confidence. Oh, thank you very much. I love this too. Or thanks. I'm really happy with how my haircut turned out. Whatever it is. That's the same type of thing that we were talking about here, but it just popped into my head that I had to practice that one as well. So anyway, let's get back on what we're talking about here. So number 7, body language training. Work on standing with your shoulders back, making eye contact, and speaking clearly. Nonverbal cues can help signal inner confidence and support your spoken boundaries. That went along with the, oh, thank you. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate the compliment. Thank you. You have to fake it until you make it, at least internally. But that's one of the things, I would always kind of, make myself sit or stand taller. Oh, thank you. Every time I had to practice that. And it does. It takes time, but you keep practicing it, and it gets much easier and much more comfortable for you, especially in this case, either to accept a compliment from someone, or to, say, that doesn't sound interesting to me. You all have fun. I'm going to decide to do something else on my own, whatever it is. No, thank you. Whatever. Emotional regulation skills. Practice calming techniques such as breath work, mindfulness, progressive muscle relaxation, whatever works for you, before or during challenging conversations. And this can help you access your assertiveness when you're anxious. Number 9, self-compassion exercises. Practice treating yourself kindly after each attempt to stand up for yourself, regardless of the outcome. And remind yourself that it is okay to have needs and that I deserve respect. Because every single human being deserves to be treated respectfully by every other human being. Number 10. This is one that I like, and despite my less than ideal circumstances in my life right now, celebrating small wins. In pushing through some of this trauma that's flared up for me over the last couple months now. Some of you have been following along and noticed that I missed getting a new episode up a couple times there. I celebrate the small wins. Yes, I would love to work out every day, but my trauma is still saying, no, that's too much, no. So if I get two workouts in a week instead of every day, great. I did 2. It could have very easily been none, but I did 2 this week. Celebrate small wins. Each time you assert yourself, no matter how minor, acknowledge it and celebrate it. And then track those wins. Get your journal, track those wins, and then you'll start seeing that progress, in black and white over time. These exercises used regularly can help you move from inward rebellion to outward self-advocacy. in safe and constructive ways. Start small, and remember, assertion does not mean aggression. For people like me, and I see this a lot, so I am absolutely not shaming any of you who do this as well. This will feel aggressive, and that is not the type of person that I would consider myself, even having done all the work. I don't say I'm an aggressive person. I can be. Don't piss me off. Don't hurt my son. Don't hurt my family. I can become very aggressive. But on the whole, I'm not an aggressive person. But things like this, everything that I read through, and as you start practicing in real world situations in your life, it will feel aggressive. And I think, let's go back real quick to celebrating those small wins. Especially in the beginning, when you start logging these wins, you may feel like, oh, I was being overly aggressive. I was being over the top. When the reality is you were probably just being assertive. We are not used to that. Chronic people pleasers, when those types of people are created through childhood trauma and a mix of whatever neurodivergent type they are, for me it's autism, it's going to feel aggressive. But it really isn't. What you're really doing is you're doing something new, first of all, but it's also honoring your needs and respecting the relationship in question, depending on who you're talking to. So let's kind of start winding these things down. I got one more topic for this chapter, and it has to do with individual strengths and identity. And this is something that has taken a lot of shadow work for me, which for me simply means, I know a lot of you have probably heard the term in like the tarot, Reiki, channeling, witchy woo-woo circles, but shadow work is essentially being brutally honest with yourself and admitting to yourself some of the less desirable qualities that you exhibit, whether they were learned, whether they're just inherent to your personality, whatever it is. It's just being brutally honest with yourself and giving yourself a good talking to. And for me, it's taken a lot of shadow work in several decades, in some instances, for me to really acknowledge, well, and to see in the first place, and then acknowledge any strengths that I have. Because thanks to my father, I entered adulthood thinking I had absolutely no strengths, no talent, no aptitudes for anything, nothing inherently good about me in any way, shape, or form. I was a failure the minute I was born into this world, because that's how my father treated us, and that's the result it had on me. So it's taken, in some cases, when I started recognizing these, it has taken 40 years in some of these cases to identify and accept my strengths, and that I actually have some. Among some of the strengths that I have identified over the years, the most of which come from my autism goodie basket, if you will. Pattern recognition skills, very logical and systematic thinking, faster problem solving, as discussed earlier in this episode, thinking outside the box, workflow efficiency, because as somebody who's autistic and was essentially masking her entire life because she was constantly told by her father that she was being a human being incorrectly no matter what I did. I am perpetually exhausted. I have been perpetually exhausted. So what my father identified as laziness in me was the physical toll it took on my little childhood body pretending to be normal, in other words. So workflow efficiency is a big one for me. It's like, what is the most streamlined way I can complete a particular task? Ability to work independently, loyalty and honesty, and emotional and mental resilience, just to name a few. Adding in my hypervigilance, internalized rebellion, which for me is a strength because I have felt this for as long as I can remember, and is something that has constantly come to the forefront of my mind as one of the key aspects of my personality that has allowed me to self-heal, not realizing that I was self-healing. As well as pushing me to keep going because I learned at an early age that things get better when you keep going. You know, you can't give up. The only way things stay the same is if you give up and don't do anything. And it was because of that internalized rebellion is, you know, especially once I started seeing through the facade, if you will, through the illusion that my father created about who I was. Like, no, actually, I'm rather quite intelligent. I'm highly organized. I'm not lazy. Yeah, it was that internalized self-rebellion that I think has been the driving force for all this. Emotional detachment, which is what often happens when the chaos erupts and someone needs to find a solution to a problem, as we discussed earlier, as well as resilience and adaptability. So, anyway, that was a lot again this week. As we bring this book to a close, we see in this chapter how everything culminates for Harry with the strengths that he perhaps is not aware of yet. And as we keep moving through the series, those of us who know the series know that, yeah, Harry has a lot of strengths that he is not unaware of. We learned several chapters ago during the flying lesson episode where the way it's written in the book, that how excited he was to find something in the magical world that just came naturally to him, and that was flying. He knew exactly what he needed to do to maneuver the broom, to do what he, you know. Can you imagine how excited that was? And so that was really the first strength, because even a couple chapters before, he's telling Hagrid, you know, he's worried that he's going to be left behind because he was raised by Muggles. And he quickly learns, once he's actually in school, that people like Ron, who grew up in all magical families, and don't really know much about the Muggle world, you know, they're really kind of all starting at the same place. So, and it turns out that Harry is an extremely gifted wizard. We will be diving into that more because I know a lot of you out there have never read the books and only read the movie and seem to think Harry's a big putz. No. We're going to have more conversations about that. But anyway, Harry is able to think on his feet rather quickly and adopt to changes in his environment and the like. So, yeah, but we really see this. We really see this with Harry in this chapter. Just, you know, that calm under pressure. He knows instinctively what to do. You know, he's not bothered, you know, in an egocentric kind of way that Ron has to be the one to play the chess game, and that Hermione has to be the one to figure out the potion puzzle. Harry doesn't take it like a lot of us tend to take it, that, oh, there's something wrong with this. I should be able to play the best game of chess ever. I should have been able to figure out that riddle that Hermione could. No, we all have strengths and we all have weaknesses. And, Harry really seems to personify that, to kind of wrap things up for this chapter. So that does it for me this week. Next week, we wrap up the Sorcerer's Stone with chapter 17, The Man with Two Faces. So until then, just remember, watch out for that devil's snare. That's tricky stuff. So have a wonderful week, everybody, and I'll see you next week for the final chapter of Sorcerer's Stone. Have a good one.